Hi, I'm JJ. Welcome back. This is my monthly wrap up. I already did a mid-month wrap up because I read a lot of books or listened to a lot of books. Plus I did individual ones. So I did Shorty September, Shake Timber, I did Tudor Timber, I did Sapphic September. So I have individual videos for all of those. But I also listened and read to ones that didn't qualify for that. So that's what this wrap up will be. So I'll start out with some of the things that I listened to. The Man Who Saw Everything by Deborah Levy. I really did like that one. At sometimes, especially towards the end, I wasn't sure what I was reading, but I didn't know what I was expecting going into it either. So it's this guy who is going to be going over before the Berlin Wall comes down, and he's trying to understand the differences and that regime. So he's dedicated his life studying fascist regimes, and he's just trying to get to know the people and do a bit of research there. So like that's the concept of like what it's about. Prior to going, he actually gets hit by a car, and then it essentially changes everything. So like I said, I didn't really know what to expect going in. I was just rolling with it. The writing is absolutely beautiful. I really liked the depiction. He is a Jew, and he is trying to understand people like Hitler and Stalin and these fascist regimes that are taking over. So he basically has his life dedicated to this work. He also, while he's over there, has a relationship with a man, which is interestingly explored, and I enjoyed that aspect of that as well. So I don't know, I really liked going along for this ride. It was an introduction. I've never read anything by Deborah Levy before, or I don't know if it's Levy or Levi, but I will definitely be reading more of her work. The next was Awakening by Kate Chopin. And this is a classic. So this was written, or at least published, in 1899. And it's about female infidelity in a marriage. And her descriptions of the inner workings of people was brilliant. She reminds me, she's not, it's a much shorter story, so she's not as wordy as some of the Russian writers are, especially when you think of Anna Karenina exploring the same aspect. He gets into all of the political and all that other stuff going on, and she focuses a lot internally. And yes, she does have to deal with the society at that time, especially how they view women, and especially adulterous women. So she does have that aspect to it, and it was very controversial when it was published, which is understanding. So there is a line, not a line, but like there is a love declaration in this book that absolutely not just rivals anything written by Jane Austen, but I thought it was one of my favorite declarations of love that I have recent knowledge in reading, and it was fascinating. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed her writing style. It was a bit slow at times. It wasn't a perfect book by any means, but it was a very thoughtful and enjoyable one. And I don't know much about her life or how many other books she read, She was not always on my radar. It's always something that I had heard of, but I didn't really know much about this book in particular. But I definitely will be looking into more about her, and even researching the book a little bit more. I also went into this book a bit blind, which I think I'm glad about. So another one, and I was also blown away by this one. So my first three were very pleasantly pleasant surprises, and I am definitely excited that I read it, and it made me feel like my reading journey for this month was going to end on a very high note. So that book is I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. That was published in 1964, so, you know, postmodern classic, but it's still a classic. It's hard to say that I enjoyed this one because it deals with mental illness. I think it would be a really great idea to, maybe not all at the same time because they're both dark, but Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath is about a descent into madness. And this is once you're already considered insane and you're in this asylum for other wayward women, how to heal and try to cure that mental illness. So they're kind of opposite sides of the same coin, but I do think that they would go well together. This one is definitely a lot more lighthearted in a way, although the Bell Jar, for the subject matter, was also a lot lighter than I was expecting. I enjoyed that one as well. But for this one, it also had almost Kurt Vonnegut feel to it as well, with how he dealt with his PTSD and his trauma from the war in writing all of his works, but especially his Slaughterhouse-Five, and how basically in order to escape the harsh, horrible realities of this real world, the only way to survive mentally is to basically disassociate and create a completely new world. So, you know, Billy the Pilgrim, goes to multiple worlds and stuff, with aliens, and she, the girl in this story, creates, she has a completely different language that she speaks. She created this whole world inside her head to try to understand what's going on in the real world. So she's, going through the harshness of just coming out of a couple wars, because you have World War II, and then you have, we had Korean War, and going into the Vietnam War as well when this was written. So you have so much harshness that she would have wanted to escape. Her character also was a Jew, so dealing with what Hitler had done to the Jews and stuff was also very traumatizing for this teenage girl to comprehend. And then just everyday life as a woman, and if you're different, or you don't conform to what society is expecting of you, then a lot of times they were deemed crazy, and it's easier to send them away to these asylums and not think about them, not look at them, than it is to deal with what might be making them act that way, behave that way, rather than taking a look at society. They just lock up anyone who is different. And so that's what this exploration is, how she finds this belonging within this community of insane women, or by society insane. Some of them were mentally ill, and some of them, like her, were more misunderstood and trying to escape. So I really enjoyed the relationships that she built there. Her therapist was a fantastic character. I liked how she was portrayed and how their relationship was portrayed. I wasn't overly always fascinated with her other world that she was creating, but I absolutely understood the significance of it. And I also found it fascinating that there was references as when they were in the asylum to Henry VIII, or actually his first wife. And I, having it be Tudor and Shake Timber, I found those references and comments amusing. And I just overall really enjoyed this book. And the idea of I Never Promised You a Rose Garden is the idea of reality is hard, especially the world that we're living in right now. Like, it's absolutely hard. That is a complete understatement. And so being in that reality, though, being part of that reality, is important. And embracing the realness of it, rather than escaping, standing up and fighting the good fight rather than, hiding. All that is basically what is represented in that title, because I Never Promised You a Rose Garden is I never promised you that it would be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And that's the whole the whole idea of life. Like, it's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it. So I really enjoyed that book. And then another one was almost a perfect book for me. Very much on the lighter side of things. Little Big Man by Thomas Berger. So Little Big Man is... It reminded me of the movie Forrest Gump, for anyone who has seen that one, where he just shows up and has cameos in, like, everything important in history. And you're like, how the heck was he there? How did he get here? How did he meet this person? He taught Elvis to sing or to dance, and he met the presidents, and he was in the ping pong Olympics, like all the weirdest stuff you can imagine, and he was always there. And so The Little Big Man tells the story of this, the character is 111 years old, and he's telling his life story. And he was captured by Cheyenne Indians when his family, a bunch of his family was murdered. Him and his sister were captured. He lived amongst the Cheyenne for a while, became really close with them, and then basically the soldiers came back in. Custer and them were fighting the Cheyenne, and then he got freed, and then he lives amongst the white men, and then he attacks more indigenous people along the way, and he's kind of in and out. Like, his character meets Custer. He's at the Battle of Little Bighorn. He meets Buffalo Bill Cody. He meets Wyatt Earp. He meets Calamity Jane. It is such a fun story because it's told very much like something Mark Twain writes. His humor, especially in his book Roughing It, where it's the most amusing story, and half of it's probably not true. He's trying to make himself more important than he is. But even if it's not true, it is just this most, the wild and fun and crazy ride. And apparently there's a sequel to it, because this only goes up until, the character's 111. He's only not even 60 by the time this book ends. So there's a whole lot of history that can still be told and unfolded. And I do want to read it because I would like to see what other events he ends up being a part of. I was very pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed the aspect of being captured by the Cheyenne, since I had already talked about that. A book that I really enjoyed was called The Captured, talking about the lives of the people who were captured by these different tribes and how they became part of that tribe. Many of them did. And just seeing this guy's point of view of, he was captured, so that's, Stockholm Syndrome type of thing, captured by the enemy. But then he ends up, really appreciating and loving the Cheyenne. But then when he is amongst the white men again, how he's so easy to keep flipping sides. And you understand, kind of, at least through the narrative, he's just going along with it, surviving type of thing. But it was still a unique and fun story, especially a lot lighter than a lot of the other stuff that I read over the course of the month. So I would recommend that one. And I think they even did, in the United States, they did a mini-series about that I kind of wanted to check out. I know I'll probably be disappointed, though. And then I read or listened to several nonfiction. But before I get to the nonfiction, there was two really short ones, and there was a short story collection, Numbers in the Dark, by Italo Calvino. And he is becoming one of my favorite writers. I know I've talked about this before. I really liked his If on a Winter's Night, Traveler. And also, I recently listened to the Cloven Count, Cloven Viscount, I think it was, and I actually enjoyed that one. That was unique too. He has a very whimsical writing style. But Numbers in the Dark was okay. I think I like his actual novels and novellas better than his short stories, but there were some really decent ones in that collection. The other one, and I actually did enjoy this, was The Road to San Giovanni. And that's actually like a memoir slash essay collection of his life. And what I found interesting is why or how he developed his writing style. Since I said, like, it's so whimsical, it reads like a fairy tale, or like almost a moral story. It reminds me a lot of Princess Bride, in that kind of a fairy tale, kind of a you get the moral of the story, but it's also fantastical and fun and humorous and stuff like that. And that's what a lot of his writing is. So he was saying that he writes that way. So he writes essential fairy tale type stories. He said people write it when they're oppressed or living under oppression, because they need something with hope, fun, to cling on to, something where, bad guys lose, good guys win, love conquers all type of thing. And so knowing his story and how he is Italian, so he survived the reign of Mussolini, and was there as the fascists in that regime took over. And so he was talking about how he grew up escaping and watching movies and stuff right up until, and I think it was like 1941 when he said they finally banned movies from the U.S. And so he couldn't watch movies and enjoy that form of entertainment anymore. So I can see where he gets his writing style from, his influence from his just kind of like how I was talking about with Kurt Vonnegut and with the character in I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, where you look for escape from the real brutal world in art. And first he found it in his uh, watching movies, but now he's writing his own, and he uses that as a form of escape, just as much as any kind of story where just to escape reality they go to an alternate universe or whatever. His is this warped, fun, fantastic world that he creates, and I don't know. For me, I really like him, so I enjoyed learning about his process and about his life and about the inspiration and stuff about how he why he writes what he writes. That might not be for everybody, especially if you haven't read any of his stuff, so you wouldn't know him. But if you do enjoy him like I do, that was a fun and a quick read. So now, on that note, the rest are a bunch of nonfiction. I'll start with the least, the one that I liked the least, but I still got a lot out of it. It was just very dense, so there was some parts that felt long or slow, but overall I did enjoy it. I think I would have liked it better had it been a different narrator, so he even made it sound dull. I think I probably would have done better with a different narrator, or if I would have read it myself, but at least I got some interesting information out of it. And it's Empires of the Sea by Roger Crowley, and it's talking about the time from 1565 to 1571. So it was the time again with when it was Islam versus Christianity. And so it was the Ottoman Empire and the Spanish Empire, who had, they got all the gold from, the South America and stuff. So they were a huge superpower. And they were one of the only ones who would have been able to afford to take on the Ottoman Empire, but also the only ones who really at the time felt like they needed to and wanted to, because they were converting the whole world back to Catholicism or to Catholicism, and they did not like the influence of the Ottoman Empire, especially when a lot of them had settled in and were taking over parts of Spain prior to that. So they were trying to get their land back, and so they were fighting over the Mediterranean there. And it talks a lot about, I'm going to probably butcher this name, Solomon the Magnificent. So he was like one of the first or main emperors of the Ottoman Empire, especially during this time of their conquest and of their rise to power and stuff. And so they were fighting over basically the heart of the area, which religion would succeed, but also they wanted the coastal areas and the ports and stuff to control. And so what's interesting is this is in that time period. So it's actually right during, the Tudor dynasty and everything. So this is all going on, and the rest of, Europe and stuff are having their Reformation. And then, you have to, who wins, and then how long can they maintain that power. But you get to see how this plays out in the broader course of history. Spain used a lot of its resources and stuff fighting this battle. They had already did a whole bunch of the Crusades, trying to reclaim the Holy Lands at that time. So it's something that, the Pope and the Spain being the biggest Catholic entity at the time, were really trying to contain the spread of any other religion, especially one so different than them when they were already struggling with the Protestant Reformation. And so you have all this backdrop, but then you have like what comes next. And so you can see how, as Spain is winding down in its power because of this costly war with the Ottoman Empire, that's when Elizabeth starts bolstering her the Royal Navy, and then they start becoming, you know, a superpower, and like you can kind of start seeing that take shape shortly after this or around this era. And so that time period is very fascinating, and it's very relevant to later in history. I did enjoy it. I just didn't love it. I gave it like a 3.25 stars. And then the other one I did enjoy was Cicero, Life and Times of Rome's Greatest Politician by Anthony Everett. And that was a solid 4-star read. I enjoyed some of the other Roman history books that I read more. I did enjoy this one just because I didn't know much about Cicero going in, other than where he appears in other parts in other people's stories. So the parts that I liked the best in here were when those main players kind of showed their faces in here. So essentially I liked all the cameos. So for this one, Pompey, Julius Caesar, Brutus, Cato, brief mention of Cleopatra and the rise of Caesar Augustus. But what I liked also was his life story leading into how he got into politics and stuff. So his family were cleaners. They weren't considered anyone important at all. And the fact that he was able to come from that, and especially into a society that was so classist, that he was able to rise as much as he did. It is fascinating what he was able to accomplish. I liked his interactions with Cato and how different they were, and how different they viewed their roles in the government and their roles within their country, their society. Cicero seems a bit petty. It's probably putting it mildly. But just speaking of cleaning, I read another book for the Shorty September, and it was talking about the African American cleaners and kind of how they got into their business, and even some of the things that they used to clean and how they clean. And one of them was talking about the strike in 1881. So I just kind of I always like to find connections in different books I read. And so the fact that he was a cleaner at the time, where we see way later, it's still a job that's undervalued and usually used by slaves or servants or people who are underpaid, and a lot of, you know, poorer people or minority people. And so the fact that that was still the case with him way back at the beginning of the century shows how we're still classist and how we haven't come very far, but also what we choose. Like, everybody needs laundry, and that's something significant that people now pay to have their clothes dry cleaned, and they pay premium for that, so that they don't have to do it themselves. And yet we still devalue or undervalue the ones who do that job. And so it started even way before Cicero's time, but he was involved in that that classism and that bigotry there. But one weird random fact that I actually found amusing was the fact that, they didn't have soap and bleach and everything back then. So to clean stains, they actually used urine. So human or animal urine, they used to clean stains. And so maybe that's why it was considered a beneath the rich people's job, because who would want to work with that type of stuff, and I can see where they would think it would be demeaning and stuff when you think about how the process had to be. And it does mention that a bit in the book, but I just find that amusing that you can once again see the through lines and think, okay, we're choosing this job for our enslaved people because it's something dirty and despicable that we do not want to do. And I can, you can see why they would find it demeaning, because of how you had to clean the laundry. So, not that basically should, make them feel better about themselves for not having to do that work. But we can see throughout history, most necessary work is the undervalued work. We need it, and yet it's the more what we call, demeaning work. So that's why, the world is built on the backs of all these people who are forced to do this work that nobody else wanted to do, but that's actually the most important work that needs to be done. Whether it's, like in my other video where America was built on the backs of enslaved people, immigrants, Native Americans, all the people who were forced into doing the backbreaking work, building, digging trenches, building railroads, digging underground and building the subways, building the White House, everything. And so why would it not also include, cleaning? And that's why, like my other video I was talking about, it was for a lot of our newly freed women who took the jobs of the cleaning. But you also have, people working farms, whether it's the, picking the crops or working in slaughterhouses and stuff. They always had to do these tough jobs. And I know I get political in a lot of my books, or in a lot of my videos, but it's really hard not to. But when we have ICE trying to get rid of all of the immigrants, and I'm not saying illegal immigrants, they're trying to get rid of all of the immigrants. We have farmers who are going to be closing up their farms because they have nobody who will work for them. And they flat out said that they thought it was, well, if we got rid of the immigrants, then it was going to be the African Americans who were going to do the jobs in the fields for us. Because once again, they can't hire anyone with the pay that they want, the low pay that they want. They can't hire enough people to actually work for them. So not only are we dealing with high tariffs for stuff coming in, but now we're not even going to have stuff here produced because a lot of these farms are shutting down. And so all that just to say that all the work that's actually important and makes the world go down is also the work that's being paid the least for. The people are not getting what they should for doing it. And just knowing that it's not a new thing, it's not an American thing. It started way before even Cicero. So not much has changed. And I guess if we like to say that we're inspired by Rome, we're living up to that and how they treated their slaves there. The other one that I read, and I actually really loved this one, was All the Shaw's Men. And that is by Stephen Kisner. And that's about the 1952 or 1953 coup, Operation Ajax. And the CIA basically forced the overthrow of the Iranian leader. I'm always going to butcher his name. I'm so sorry. Mossadegh. He was progressive. He was leading his country. Mossadegh, I think. He was leading his. That's at least how we pronounce it in the United States. Sorry to keep getting interrupted. He was leading his country towards democracy, trying to be nationalizing his the oil, and Britain first did not want to give up the oil. Churchill, who was very pro-colonization, imperialism, was still trying to fight to hold on to what they believed their rights to Iran's oil were. And so they were trying to convince the U.S. to join them in a coup. President Truman refused to do it. He did not want to, make that this thing that we were going to start doing, especially in democratically elected governments. And we were just getting out of a world war. He did not want to destabilize the nation or the region. So he said no. They did not like that. So as soon as he lost his re-election and Eisenhower won, he barely got into office before Dulles brothers were in control of the CIA and the Department of Defense, I believe. So they ran the covert and the overt operations in the United States and had way too much control. And they convinced Eisenhower to go along with this coup. And Kermit Roosevelt, who was the grandson of Theodore Roosevelt, who is another imperialist. And so he went there, drummed up support, drummed up a whole lot of strife there. He caused a lot of turmoil within the nation, so that they could blame it on Mossadegh not being able to properly control his government. And they were trying to they were trying to place their own Shah in charge. And so that story is fascinating. You get to learn more about Mossadegh in his upbringing and what he was trying to do for his nation. He seemed like a very interesting guy who's completely wiped from history for the most part, or at least, in the United States. And also, it set a huge precedent because it was successful by American standards, and the fact that they were able to overthrow him and place their puppet person on the throne that then let them continue to use their oil. It started all this extra turmoil and animosity against the U.S. that Iran did not previously have against the U.S. They were anti-Britain for all their times colonizing them, but they, especially under Truman, believed that the U.S. Was on their side, or at least impartial, and not the villain that they became. And so this started a whole lot of decades and decades of not only hatred and mistrust against for the U.S. for their actions, but it also showed the U.S. that they could do these coups. So they went to Guatemala and South America, Central America, once again Korea, shortly after, Vietnam, all the places that we went and thought that we could place someone who more aligned with what we wanted, which was access to them, to be able to put up our bases, but also to reap all of their natural resources. And so this book is very important because it shows the start of that destability. It starts the result, or the start of our foray into becoming an empire. So I highly recommend this book, but I also recommend a couple of books. One I don't have, and that one is called How to Hide an Empire. I don't remember what the author's name is for that one, but I will look that one up and write it down below. And that's about all the different empires, or American Empire. It's all about the different countries that we basically colonized or took control of. So it has a lot about the Philippines. It has a lot about Puerto Rico and the Samoan Islands and all that stuff. It talks about Hawaii and Alaska and stuff like that. So that one is absolutely fascinating. Another one that I keep mentioning, the Confessions of a Economic Hitman, delves into this as well. That talks about each of the coups that the United States was involved with. This one gives not just the coup, but the aftermath of that coup in Iran, its effect of the Middle East, and then its effect on its relations with the United States. So this doesn't just do the coup, it goes well beyond all the ways that we are affected by that particular incident. And then the other one, if you want more information about the Middle East in general, this one I also found fascinating, a very good read. It's Black Wave, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the 40-year rivalry that unraveled culture, religion, and the collective memory in the Middle East. And this is by an author from Lebanon, and it doesn't just talk about Saudi Arabia and Iran. It talks about all of it talks about the 79 revolution, which is also mentioned in that All the Shah's Men book, but it talks about all the revolutions, in Egypt and all throughout the Middle East. There's a lot in here about Lebanon as well, since that's especially been in the news lately, with Israel's genocide and all their attacks and stuff on not just the Palestinians, but obviously Syria, Lebanon. I can't even remember how many. Yemen, I know that they attacked. But this shows in detail each of the different revolutions in each individual country and how they're all interconnected, and how the revolutions themselves influenced each individual and going on towards when you get, the Arab Spring and stuff later that you had. So this one, talks about the past, but also goes right up into more modern history. I really enjoy this one. So those are the ones that I listened to. And I also just quickly wanted to mention, I did talk about Anne Boleyn and Elizabeth I for my Tudor timbre video. But I completely forgot to mention what I wanted to, and how the Hamlet by Shakespeare was actually inspired by, or Shakespeare's way to criticize Henry VIII after Elizabeth died, um, by writing him marrying his brother's wife, which is what he did with Catherine of Aragon, his first wife. I just wanted to throw that in there. It's still Shake Timber, or I might not be when I post this, but it very much was part of that, and I wanted to include that because I meant to and I forgot. And so the last book that I read, that I completed this month, was my only, no, not my only 5-star read. I actually gave All the Shell's Men a 5-star as well. But this is Sisters in the Wind, and I absolutely loved this book. I think I liked it even better than the Firekeeper's Daughter, which is the prequel to this, or I guess the original, and this is the sequel. And that is another 5-star read. So I guess if you can do like a 5.5-star or 6-star read, then this would be higher. But this tells a story, and it focuses on the lives of the children who were taken from their homes. Not specifically put in the schools and stuff. It doesn't talk about that. It talks more about the welfare system, and how the child services came into the reservations, told the people that they were too poor, even though they were poor because we put them on the reservations, and then denied them access to things. But because by our standards, they were poor, and so therefore they could not care for their own children, so then we just took them away. And so they created this act that is supposed to be trying to help get these children from the foster system and place them back in, whether it's in their homes or with their family or with their tribe. They're trying to at least repair some of that damage that was done to them over the years. And so this was told, you get to understand that significance. You get to see the horrors of foster care, and especially when it's people who are devalued as humans being placed in these welfare systems. And you also have this fantastic mystery. I didn't see it all coming. There was a pretty good twist at the end. And I just really love that you get this huge cultural understanding of whatever she's deciding to tell at the time. And so like this time it was, children in foster homes. The first time it was the mistreatment, abuse of women, but also the drugs and stuff filtering into their reservations. And then the last book in the series, or at least the third book in the series, is about them not having their bones, when they're dug up and stuff, returned to their tribes. They're just being stored in colleges or museums and stuff like that. And so she talks about things that are very important to the communities, and educates us about those hard topics. But she also always has a mystery element to it, that you're trying to figure out who the real villains are, and what's really going on. So it's not just, telling you this story, and it's making you kind of work for it, which I always find fun. But a significant part of this, and I did want to read the end, it's the author's note, because I think this is very important. An Indian tribe cannot survive without future generations. Therefore, Indian children are a tribe's most precious resource. And so the Indian Child Welfare Act is it's under attack now with the government that we have. But it's also a battle, and she writes here, it's a battle that has nothing to do with the best interests of children. So when you think of children being the future of all these tribes that are being brutally ripped away for stupid, made up reasons, you have to think about what the end game is. And this part is what I wanted to share with you, because this is the part I want you to think about and why this is very important. The end game has always been power. Those opposed to the Indian Child Welfare Act are not fighting for Indian children's best interests, but rather to extinguish tribal sovereignty. These individuals and their well-funded organizations desire valuable minerals and other natural resources on land owned by Native American tribes. Wars are fought for control over resources such as fossil fuels and, more recently, rare earth materials necessary for technology that will be used by people and against people. These resources are located across the earth, including beneath land owned by Indian tribes who have retained rights to minerals and other national resources. So in 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the Indian Child Welfare Act. So this is important because that happened before our current legislation and our current president. So while this is a decision that keeps that intact, there were two dissenting justices, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, who provide breadcrumbs in their written opinions for opponents to strategize and ready for the next battle. There is a popular saying, the race is not to the swift, but to those who endure. Those opposed to the Indian Child Welfare Act have deep pockets and a singular mission to control precious resources. It was never about the children. So by them taking away the children, which are the future of these tribes, they are trying to eliminate these tribes so that there will be no claim to the resources that they want. Water, minerals, and other precious resources that all rights and by all rights belong to these tribes are at risk. Not just always have been, but are going to be greater risk with this administration. That's just one more thing that you need to think about that we're losing with this administration. But that is something that's just very important to me, and I wanted to share with you how much is at risk in this fight for these children. And over these children that should have never been taken from their homes to begin with, and that continue to. In this book, they were talking about how the kids are told by their representative to not claim their native heritage, to say that they're something else, because it's too much work for the social workers to put in the correct paperwork to use this Indian Child Welfare Act and try to keep them within their tribe and their community. They don't want to do the extra work, or they're paid by someone not to want to think about that as they remove them from their homes. And very important book, very important thing to think about. Once again, I can't help getting political on my story, on my videos, so I do apologize for that. And then the last book, I didn't get to finish it. I actually had been excited for the Buccaneers, but I've had a hard time getting into it. I keep putting it aside to read other things, just because the TV show that I watched was fantastic, but it did not focus on the mom and it did not focus on the governess. The mom ends up being a fantastic character later on, or at least in the book or the movies or the TV show. In the book, the mom is so annoying and prejudiced and classist and just downright uninteresting person whose point of view I have to follow to try to get to what I'm actually interested in. Same with the governess. I know that she has a slight arc in the TV show, but I have no interest in her whatsoever. So I'm 50 pages in and barely get to talk with the characters that I fell in love with in the series and why I wanted to read this, which focuses on the friendship of these two sisters, Annabelle, who goes by Nan, and her sister Virginia, who goes by Jenny, with their other friends. So there's two other sisters, Lizzie and Mabel, and then there's Conchita, who is a very interesting character. She's huge in the story for the TV show, so I'm really hoping she's significant here. But her mom is from Brazil, and there's this controversy of if her mom is even married to the Mr. Clausen, or if it's a mistress or a slave, because they're of color. And so they're not really fitting into this rich, high white society. And the mom doesn't want her daughters to be hanging around with her. But the youngest daughter specifically really admires her and wants to hang out with her and is doing so against her mom's wishes. That part is interesting to me. The mom's point of view and the governess point of view are not. So I'm hoping that I get more about the actual kids later on. I just have not been able to bring myself to really focus on this book when it's taken me a while to get into it, and I've read and enjoyed so many other things instead. So I will eventually get there, but if I until I can get to the point where I'm excited about it and can't put it down, I keep putting other books first. But I do want to finish reading this sometime by the end of the year. And I also wanted to talk about the 3 books that are on my TBR for October. I know this videos are already really long, so it's just really quick. For my book club, we're reading Piranesi. I can never pronounce that name. Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I'm really excited about this one. I know that I'm probably going to be very confused reading it, but I am looking forward to that journey. And then the other ones, The Sovereign by C.L. Clark. I'm really excited about this one because this one is the last book in the Magic of the Lost trilogy, and I have loved those books so much. I'm really sad to actually have this be the end. I don't want to leave the characters yet, but I do want to see what happens. So that book comes out on Tuesday. I think I'm going to be posting this on Wednesday. So hi from the future. But I will hopefully have that book in my hand and being able to read it as soon as possible. And then the other one is a shorter story. I think it's like a novella by that same author, so C.L. Clark. It's Fate's Bane. I don't know much about that one. I do know that it's a sapphic romance fantasy, and I have enjoyed her Magic of the Lost trilogy, so I'm excited to read this completely separate standalone book. So those are the 3 that I'm for sure reading in October. Hopefully maybe making a little leeway on the Buccaneers, and I do kind of need to get back into Outlander as well. But we'll see what else October brings us. Sorry for the rant and sorry for the long video. I hope you found at least some of it interesting, and hopefully you found at least something that you might want to look into and try reading. Thank you, and have a great day.